We're going to call this one Buzz, B-U-Z-Z, like Buzz Aldrin, Buzz. And this guitar is going to go to Italy when it's done. Now, the funny thing is, the person that it's going to has actually opened for, that's right, Bob Log the Third. So this is going to be a trash, junky junk pile. It's got a single pickup. We're going to put a coil in this, and we're going to put a Piezzo on it. We're going to set it up like Bob's guitar and get it over to Italy. What's funny about this poster is actually from a gig Bob did in Italy, believe that or not. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to catch some glimpses of how Buzz is being built along the way. I'm going to start off by doing some fine sanding, putting naphtha on this to get the oils and stuff. I've told you that sometimes these kits, they lubricate the truss rod. There will be some oil there and stuff. But this thing is going to be hot rodded up. It's going to be cool, and you're going to get some glimpses along the way before we ship it off, and then you'll figure out who gets it once Tammy signs it. Once that happens, I'll reveal some more. So sit back, get some popcorn or whatever you do, and let's take this thing to the bench. Okay guys, this is a single cutaway Archtop body, as I said, and it's pretty cool because it's got one pickup. I like guitars like this. Every once in a while it doesn't have the two pickups and all that. So what we're going to do with this, as I said, is we're going to put a Piezzo under the bridge so you get that trashy, dirty Delta blues stuff where you can actually hear this kind of stuff coming out of the guitar. And of course there will be a coil in here that screams. But what we're going to do, as always, is we're going to hit this with some 600 grit, and then we're going to go over it with a wipe all rag and make sure that everything is not going to snag up. Then we're going to take some naphtha and we're going to wipe this whole thing down, and believe it or not, we're going to use the same thing to seal the body that Michelangelo used to prep walls and canvases and maybe even the Sistine Chapel, and that is egg white. So you're going to see me do a little bit of that, and now we're going to start putting wild color on this and protecting the binding. So let's go for the ride. Okay, gloves on right away. Anywhere where there's a hole for a control, we're going to take the reamer and get any of that stuff that's along the edges, because that'll mess up our finish. Reamers are awesome, so are magnets on the edge of your bench. Now, we're going to take that sandpaper. Notice the grain is running this way. It's a little bit different on the sides. The wood's a little bit different on the sides. And you also want to think about, when you look at the binding, whether it's going under the bridge or not. I've got a binding scraper that I made. It's almost like those knives that they make in Borracho, where they make those banjos, quintos, and sextos. But we want to make sure that everything is smooth there. And then we're just going to take the sandpaper and go over and make sure that everything is okay. This part right here is very fragile. Make sure that you're careful with that. But these kits have binding here. You want to check that. It's usually pretty much okay. And whatever I'm doing on the top here, we're going to do on the sides as well. Now, Wipe All, WYPALL 80 is a paper-based rag, and I have found that if you're going over the surface of your guitar and nothing hangs with this, it's going to be okay. It will take finish okay. So now we're going to use some naphtha, and naphtha in California, you can't get naphtha unless you call it lighter fluid. So what this does, if there's any glue around the edges or any fingerprints from handling or packaging or anything like that, this stuff is going to clean it up. So don't be shy. It vaporizes off. And again, wear your gloves because you don't want to get fingerprints on this thing once you've done the naphtha treatment. Again, it will just vaporize off. Check it out. Not too much dirt on there. And we're going to do this with all sides of the guitar and the back. There's a tad bit of work to do on this binding right here to make sure that it's level with the face of the body where that neck fits in. There we go. Awesome. Now the back of the guitar, the grain runs a little bit different way, so pay attention to that. I like to be able to go all the way here, like so. Now, you can see that right there, there's a little bit of something looking there. It might be some glue from the binding. We will see, but there's nothing hanging up the wipe ball. Again, these gloves are a must. Now, let's do the naphtha. We're going to change the surface of our wipe ball there. There we go. That will all vaporize off and we are good to go. All right, here we go. Egg whites with a foam brush. And we're just going to put this on here. And what this does, it acts like a sealer. I also have been known to use potassium silicate to seal this, but this will soak in and it will make a good base for our stain. Yeah, we're going to stain this. We're going to use that black stain that we usually use, but the sides are going to be a little bit different in color. This thing is going to be a screamer. Now, if you see some odd marks coming up on here, don't be afraid to go to back to work with the sandpaper and naphtha, because everything wants to be just right. There's nothing worse than having a spot on your guitar that the finish is just screwed up. It either what's that word? Mottle, M-O-T-T-L-E, or things won't stick to it. You don't want that. So again, we're going to put this everywhere, front, back, and sides. All right, we are going to put a wild color on the side of this guitar. So we're going to take the time, it's going to save us a bunch of time to tape off the binding, we can always scrape it. You've seen me do that before, but we are going to get this binding protected. All right, guys, I am working on the finish on the neck on this thing, and we've done a lot to it. A lot of different parts coming together at different times, including this gauge that goes in here and whatever. You want to remember that everything you touch has your oils on it, grease, who knows what. So when you get back to doing some finish work that you need to complete, like we haven't done the neck or the back or that muffler on that loud truck that's going by, but you want to remember everything has oil and grease on it. And when it gets to your finish, not that these finishes that I put on are anything grand, but you really don't want them messed up. So when you go back to work on your finish, you want to go over the spots that you haven't done with naphtha. Now, if you can't get naphtha in California because it's got a warning label that says it's cancerous, and the warning label itself is cancerous, and it has its own label, kind of like the cover of Pink Floyd Umaguma, where the image goes on forever. But again, you want to take naphtha and you want to go to the chiropractor because you're an old man and bent over because you dropped your cloth, which is a White Ball 80, by the way. Rubber gloves and White Ball 80 and naphtha. Oh, isn't it nice that somebody's aunt lent them the car for the afternoon so they could go beat it? Anyway, Get some finish on the back of this thing. Alright guys, I've done quite a bit since you saw me last. We've got a finish on everything here. Headstock is done. We did the binding, and after some careful taping off, you want to remember I got a box of tricks. It's got everything in it for scrape and binding. But one of your best friends is the utility razor blade with a piece of tape on it with just the part that you want to do the binding with exposed, because the rest of the tape will keep you off the top. So it's something as simple as using your thumb and finger and going along, and wherever there's paint on it or wherever you want to scrape, you do that. You've seen enough of my binding videos to know what that is. But we're going to focus pretty soon here on taking this. I don't like this color. It's cool, but it's too cowboy-y from like the 1950s, and I need to dull it up. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to pop this amp gauge out. We know that the person that this is going to is certainly going to need this, so they don't just literally blow up while they're playing their guitar. Okay, so we're going to take 1,000 grit paper, and we're just going to go over the top of the guitar and just knock down anything that's going to stick in the way or stick up, and just basically take, if there's any glaze built up, we'll do that. We just want to rough this up and mar it up a little bit. Try to go with the grain if you can. But again, this is 1,000 grit paper. Now, if you want to wet sand it, that's fine. We're using water-soluble products here, so if you have to do that, that's great. But while you're doing this, you're going to be looking at, where do you think the wear would be on this guitar? Well, if you're right-handed, it's going to be up in here. So we're going to pay attention to that a little bit around the edges, like so, where your arm would come across. And then in this area over here where the strumming is going, we're going to pay attention to that there. Anything that's sticking on the binding right now, it's really easy to take a little tiny piece of this like so and bend it over to the same width as the binding, and then turn it over so there's nothing else that can stick, and just run that edge like that. You see that? But you get the general idea. And then we're just going to wipe all this down like so. And then we're going to make sure we've got a fresh new surface, and we're going to use some of this antiquing glaze. I shook it, so there's going to be some in the top. Now, this stuff has a working time of about 15 minutes, and what you're going to do is you're just going to wipe it on. We're going to keep it away from the binding. I don't want to scrape the binding again. So you're just going to do this. Start off going around the edge. I did the binding on the F hole already, so you're going to want to stay away from that. Besides that, the F holes are low. You want to remember the F holes are the lowest part. This upper part is what's sticking out. You want to remember where your bridge is. Nothing's going to be worn under your bridge or anything like that. So again, think about an old guitar that you've picked up and you're looking at the wear pattern. So you're going to get this on here. Oh, by the way, you want to make sure that your guitar is acclimated to the product you're putting on it. So put them both in the same room. Okay, now I am just going to make sure I don't have a bunch of this scooped up onto one spot. You're going to be able to see this better on the red section. Okay, we're going to let this soak in just a minute or two, and then we're going to wipe it off. You're going to be able to see the effect a lot better when I do the red part. But yeah, make sure that this stuff is stable. Don't let it drop. onto your workbench because that'll be a nightmare. Did I ever tell you about the time I was dyeing chick flick teal fabric like this and it blew up all over the place? Yeah, we're gonna need this for the inside of one of these guitars I'm working on soon. Anyway, enough talking there. I'm just gonna take this now and I'm gonna wipe it with the grain, just like this. Stay away from the binding. See that? Fold the cloth over when you're going to get around binding, so you got a fresh new surface, and then put the binding part right in the middle where nothing will pick it up. See? Now what this is going to do is it is going to give you a dull matte and give you some contrast for if there's anything that's low or a wear spot or something. Remember, I've already scraped the binding, so I don't want to get a bunch of this on the binding, but there you go. Now, once this dries, I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to lac polish it, and but it's got to dry first. So let's flip this over, and you're going to see that on the red part, it's far more pronounced. So let's move things around. Okay, one more time. We are going to go over this with 1000 grit sandpaper. I've got my brush here, and we're just going to lightly rough this up. And remember, your finish has to be dry. You don't want to be trying to go over wet finish that hasn't settled itself in. And if you need to, you can always take your painter's tape and go along and line it up with that edge, like so. Remember, it doesn't really have to be perfect. You don't want the binding being hit with this stuff, but it's not going to matter if it's a little unclear around the edge, because this is about a cheap guitar looking even cheaper than it is. Okay, but I'll do this so everybody doesn't freak out. Okay, so there we are. Good. Here we go. You're like, what are you doing? Right? You don't have to worry about it, everything being exactly the same. You can tell that I'm taking the edge of the rag and running it right up to the binding. Remember, you got 15 minutes of work time with this. Okay, there we go. We got a couple of spots here that I want to put a little bit more on, but not too much, and then we're going to get it wiped off right away. And then I've got a wet edge to make sure that my binding is okay. Play a little around with the binding a little bit, because it will put a little bit of a darker color on your binding, and it all looks like this guitar's been around for a while. All right, there we go. Again, we're going to let it dry, and then we'll do our French polish. All right, guys, let's talk about the finish. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I don't want to make this video too long, but we're going to use a technique called French polish on this. And since this guitar is going to Italy, and since it's a lot like a guitar I made for Bob Log III, by the way, this poster is from an appearance by Bob Log in Italy. And the person that this guitar, this guitar is going to has opened for Bob Log in said Italy. I think it's pretty cool that we would use the French polish technique, which actually goes back to old violins and cellos. Now look at this and look at this. I'm going to explain this in a minute, but here's the trick. I run across and fix up guitars that are broken and tattered and battered, and I want you to see that I kind of tend to put things back together. That runs across a lot of gamuts, but I want you to remember that once you breach the finish, like you can see here, that there is still original finish here, and if you wipe it off, it's a little bit shiny. You can see it here, but once you get into the wood, the opportunity to preserve its original finish is gone. So people value that highly in guitars with original finish. So if you're coming across a Gibson Archtop from the 1930s and you're thinking about stripping it down, you just made a terrible mistake. Now there's a fine line between that and something like this, the Monterey Junkpile. I think I should give you a link to the playlist right up there right about now. But I need you to know that this guitar used to look like this. And so what ends up happening is I get everything glued back together. The Archtops or something else. When they're cracked, you got all kinds of radiuses, radii to work, concave spots, high spots, back is beat up, finish gone. So what I do is I finish this. See how shiny that is? With the same technique that they used in Cremona, Italy in the 1600s when they were building violins. So let's take a look at this quick. This is a copy of an Italian violin, but this one was made in Mittenwald, Germany area in the mid-1800s. So you'll run across people who see these, they look inside, this says Stradivarius, so they think they found a $4 million violin. Or a dirt bike that can't get out of third gear, going by right now. Anyway, they literally made hundreds of thousands of these and sold them off to the market. And the Mittenwald German craftsmen were getting pretty good at making violin copies, kind of like the Chinese market is doing now, and that's where everyone's gone. And you can't fault them for having a whole city that does great guitars. Anyway, so if you take this, and you see all this here, all this dirt and grime, you take it off and get down to this area. You don't want to get past there. Once you start seeing this color showing up on your cleaning pad, it's bad. This is dirt and stuff. Anyway, we'll come into the top, which I've cleaned. And once you get down in here, you can tell that there has been work done. Here there was a crack or a split. Here there's some stuff down by the sound holes, etc. But once you get this cleaned up, uh-oh, Mommy must have told him not to get more than a quarter mile from the house. Anyway, you will see this on the bench. It's called a lac polishing pad. It has three components. It has a piece of cotton, a wool sock, wool, not wool blend, and a fine linen. So when you're at Bed Bath & Behind and you're trapped in there and you're looking at bed sheets that have Egyptian thread counts of over 1,200, you want this. So your thing is get those sheets in the cart and then find a reason to damage them so you can cut this up and make lac pads. Anyway, you put lac polish in here, you charge it from here, and it stays wet and it's spirit based, so you're wiping varnish on the guitar basically, and you'll feel it sticking. Some people say, oh, put some olive oil. Don't do that. You're gonna end up with rotten olive oil between your layers of finish. But the trick to this is you take this, you pound it down like this, like so, and then you come on to whatever you're doing. Glide on, do not plop on, because when you plop on, the marks of your rag are going to be left. If you hear a clicking while you're going, that means that there's a fold developing up here. wear gloves, but it looks like this. Glide on and make a series of concentric circles, and the wetting pattern, you'll be able to tell where it is because it will pull back at you. Again, do not put some kind of oil on here to try and make it go longer, but you're just going to keep doing this. Remember, the top will take care of itself because it sticks up here and it's easy to hit. It's the area around the F-holes. Do not get going too fast around here because you'll break out an F-hole. Like I said, this violin is from the mid-1800s, but you keep doing this and it will start to stick to itself because the spirit vaporizes off. Now, once you do this, don't stop. And when it comes time to come off, you don't just pick it off, you glide off like that. Glide on, glide off. Okay. It doesn't hurt to put a dropper of Everclear on this, put it back in the bottle. You'll be able to use it again and again. Keep. When it's time to recharge it, it's drying out. Always charge it from here. Don't dip it in here or whatever. You want capillary action to keep your flow out of the lac pad uniform. Now on Buzz, what we're going to do is I've got a bigger lac pad that I've made, and you'll be able to see it is, let's see here, cotton, a wool sock. Look at that argyle finish there, mate. And then we have fine linen. Now watch the edges that they don't fray, because a piece of this will end up on your finish like so. Anyway, you're going to wind this up. If there's too much in it, it's too wet, you squeeze it and you wind this up like this. You want this part to be smooth and flat. And then the same thing. The arched area is right here. You're going to hit it more than you want to. You want to focus on the outer areas, and especially around here where the Venetian cutaway is. Glide on. Keep going in circles. We'll go around in circles. You can have Billy Preston come over and help you if he's not busy, but you just keep doing this over and over. Do not stop. Do not let anything get in your way. Think before you stop and just keep going. Wasn't that smooth? And you're going to feel it pulling back on itself. Resist the YouTube videos that tell you to put oil on it. They're by the guy who still wears socks only and living in his parents' basement. Okay. Now, I learned this from Fred. You see Fred on this channel. His father sold the bass of Spain, which was a cello made by Stradivari that someone took the front off of. And the violin hunter, Tarisio, found it and got it put back together. That's a good read, the violin hunter, but it's starting to stick to itself pretty good here. And so I'm going to come off of it like that. On, off. There we go. I've got a bunch of coats to do, and then we're going to put the hardware on this thing. See you in a bit. Okay guys, let's catch up. Coat after coat of lac polish on this guitar. It looks shiny from there, but it's still got that worn and used look, which was what we wanted. We went ahead and put some Grover tuners on it. We want this thing to be okay. And if you look close up there, at the very top, there's a light tint of Chick Flick Teal, and it says Tami, T-A-M-I, up there in the convex of that headstock. So let's flip this over, and we're going to take a look here. Let me grab the pointer. So we have put on the tailpiece, and there is a piece of grounding wire that goes from here, and we're going to put a strap button here, but there's a piece of grounding wire that goes from that tailpiece in through the body, and this is a Gibson-esque looking tailpiece, but because that wire is grounded or run to the tailpiece, the strings will be grounded. There is a screaming big mouth humbucker here, and I think I'll give you a link to that below. But this thing here is a screamer, believe me. Look at that. And if you pay attention up to the right up here, or maybe your left, I don't know, but there's this little switch here, and what that switch allows to happen is humbuckers are, whenever you've got a single coil where you've got a row of magnets and winds, you're going to hear some level of buzz, and you'll see people moving around and lining up with some unidentified plane. They're trying to get in line with the amplifier so it doesn't buzz. So what somebody decided is, if I put another coil row here with magnets in the same setup, these two will negate the buzz, thus humbucker. Now what the switch does, it allows you to flip between this set of magnets and windings and this one, and because these are opposite to each other, it does different sounds. It will also let you kick on everything. Nice little switch there. But there is a volume and tone control here, and you see there's a hole here because there are two pickups and they are wound independent, or there are two pickups. They are wired independently. One of them is for the humbucker, the other one is for the Piezzo that will pick up percussive noises on the instrument. Now, I use pushback wire. It is pre-tinned. You push this back, and then you'll find I also use shrink wrap abundantly. This is the volume control for the Piezzo. Now I want to tell you a little trick. Dental floss, like so, make a loop, run it around your finger, run it back through itself, like so, pull it down, take your finger and thumb, make a loop like this, okay? It gives you a double loop, like so. You can put this around the stem of your potentiometer, go up towards the top. If you go towards the bottom, it is going to try and flatten itself out like this. You don't want that. You can then take a coat hanger. This is the best thing ever. You can bend it, you can do whatever, and you will have dropped that loop before you put it on the potentiometer down in here. You will pull it through. You can put a small piece of washer, metal, magnet. You can put a magnet in this loop right here, and you can reach in and pull everything out. You pull your potentiometer up into place. You put your nut. I like star washers on the downside because they stop things from turning, and you pull everything into place, and then you just pull off the dental floss. I want you to notice here that these are different colors. I'm going to change this one out to a silver one because a dark dive bar juke joint, it's hard to spot black when you're hooking up your two respective inputs. You have two amps or two different circuits on your amp, and this one will give you the percussive sound. This one is for the hot humbucker. Let's finish off by looking at the top. This is Marvel Mystery Oil. Again, it has Grover tuners. The Chick Flick Teal screws are right there, and it's got an access port for a truss rod. Again, Tammy can't sign these anymore, so her name is stamped there. I'll see you in a bit. All right, guys, let's catch up for just a minute. I think this Piezzo stuff is important, and we talked about this hot rod humbucker we have here, and these wires sticking out in this hole right here. This is for a Piezzo. So what a Piezzo does, as I've explained a little bit earlier in the video, it picks up the percussive things that are happening. You're sliding your slide up and down the neck, you're tapping on the guitar. And so again, we have two inputs, one for a Piezzo that'll have a volume control, and one for your coils and or coil humbucker. And then there's usually a tone control on the humbucker or coil, but the Piezzo not so much. So I kind of want to show you a little something here real quick. I know this video is getting long, but it'll give you some background. Let's go back to the days when I was building cigar box guitars, which I still do. I used Camacho 60 by 6 boxes because they're durable. I know people use Patron boxes and all kinds of other things, but mine went out touring with artists, so they had to be beefy. Plus I liked how they opened up, because I ended up using sink drains from a recreation vehicle or RV and bolts running through, and this way I could just open the guitar up like so. Anyway, you see the same repeat of things. You see a color-coded set of input jacks. One goes to a coil pickup and the other goes to, that's right, a Piezzo, which was buried right next to the treble side of the bridge right there. Yeah, this is kind of the wiring diagram, and what do you know? Yeah, this is the guitar that won first place at the Antelope Valley Fair and Alfalfa Festival. So when you see these first place ribbons, yeah, they're real. That kind of shows you the complexity of things around where I live. And then you could just spin these up and you're ready to go again. But that's kind of where I first started using Piezzos. There's some guys that build cigar box guitars. They don't like these constructed wood boxes. They like more stuff that's tone wood. So now that we got the big shiny guitars out of the way, let's kick on the light. There we go. Is that good? No, that's even worse. Okay, so let me show you what I'm going to do. I want the Piezzo to be right here. Treble side is here. And we know by now that when I put the floating bridge on, this is not the floating bridge, this is from the 50s, by the way, that I'm going to have to sand this down. There will be an intonation mark from back of the 12th fret, or back of the nut to the middle of the 12th fret. That measurement is the same where this goes, and we're going to have to tilt it a little bit because the strings are different sizes. Once that lines up, I'm going to sand this down to match the Archtop. If you don't, wherever it's high or low, you'll start getting cracks after a while. Let's say it's here. I want this to be on the treble side, right under here, like so. I want to be able to hide my wires. I've hid the wires over here for this stuff, over here. And once I get all this put together, this is the input wire harness from the jack for the Piezzo. Anyway, I want to put it right here, and I need to make sure that it doesn't fall out or get jarred loose. Now, to give you a hint, when you are using medium set CA glue, stuff's great, but you want to remember, if it gets shocked, hit, impacted, it tends to break right across the line where it's connected. If you're using it on necks, that's a problem. So anyway, let's get over here and take a look. I use other types of boxes. This is Arturo Fuente box. And what I'm trying to mock up for you here is I want this Piezzo. This is a Piezzo, by the way. It has a brass disc, a ceramic part, and a ground wire that goes to the outside, which is the brass disc, and the hot wire is attached to this wafer of ceramic. It reads, it's a transducer. You can use it for a burglar alarm. You can tell if a tree moves, if you're doing scientific stuff, and it reads vibrations and sends it back. And if you have a way to amplify that, it's good. So here's what I do. I want to take a piece of wood that's durable, and I want to use that to mount the Piezzo underneath the soundboard of the guitar. So what I want to do is I want to show you that this is not very strong. So what I want to do is I want to protect this thing. I want to make sure that these wires don't get tore up. So shrink wrap is a good thing. You see that? So first thing I'm going to do is pick a spot on the box. I'm going to know I want it cut out. I'm going to know how many of these I want, so I may build 10 of them right here. But I'm going to take a Forstner bit. See that? It's got a tip on it that's a little bit bigger than the Piezzo disc. I'm going to drill down. The box needs to be thick enough where I can drill down like so and get enough of a depth to make sure that the Piezzo disc will actually fit down in there. Then I want to take another bit, put it in my drill, lay it sideways, and come in and waller this out so the Piezzo wires have a place to get out from underneath everything. Can you see that? Yeah, let's do that. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the shrink wrap on here like so. I'm going to use a heat gun or a lighter or who knows what I have. And then I'm going to want this side to be up. So this needs to be flush underneath here. And these need to be protected. And this will all sit down here and make this nice and flush. Then I'm going to take a hot glue gun. I'm going to fill this up because these wires on this disc are going to want to make this tilt a little bit. I'm going to put some hot glue in there. I almost said high glue. And then I'm going to push this down until it's level with this box edge right here. Once that's done, I'm going to make sure that this is shrunk down and put in here. Then I'm going to cut this out and I'm going to put this up underneath the soundboard or top of the guitar. And that way this is in place. You can cut this out round. You can make a diamond out of it. You can do whatever you want. But if you look here, this here is nice and flat. Got to get a little bit of that hot glue off of there right up to the edge like so, and I can do that with a razor blade that's taped off. Anyway, this here will fit right up there. This is protected, it's tough, and I can make this connection, and I'm going to go do that right now. Always have a good box of shrink tube. Tam, my daughter, used to help me cut this stuff. Always close this up, don't let it spill. Now, I got to quit talking and get back to work on this monster. All right, here we go. It is done. And I have hooked it with a couple alligator clips to an input jack. I still have to wire the volume pot, but this now can glue right here, underneath here like this. Of course, we'll turn it the other way because the volume pot is back there. But I can fit it right there like that. And when I strum the guitar, it will pick up. That's no cigar box guitar trick. Anyway, you look up there, right about now, you might see Luther Dickinson singing out of this can, which is set up the exact same way. Because I'll tell you what, if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much, son.
Alright, here I go. Alright, so I think what I'm going to do is, for my next step, is figure out my
All right, guys, we are DUN done with Buzz, the Junkpile Archtop. It has been a long day up here in Malibu, California, cultural capital of the world. But I started off the drive this morning finding out that one of the guitars I had built at TAM had signed the Mississippi Mudslide, which was inspired loosely by the idea that the violin makers of Cremona, Italy might have used dirt as ground material for the violins and cellos. I was on that trip and I made a guitar a couple years ago that I actually stained with Mississippi River water and Mississippi mud provided by Deke Rivers and Cody Harrell, respectively. No, not respectively like that, like in that order. Look, just, I wear the stuff so y'all feel comfortable. Anyway, I was driving up here this morning, notification went off, and what do you know? There's Wendy Jean Garrison on yet another Mississippi Socialite magazine with the Mississippi Mudslide. Look at that guitar, it was beautiful. Tam signed it. Anyway, thank you, Wendy Jean. I got Chick-fil-A Teal Pointer ready to go. Let's take a look at this thing. First off, this was stained with oak gall ink, Quercus species. So, an insect of the order Hymenoptera, which is stinger bees, wasps, finds a leaf axil in a branch and oviposits an egg there, and the ovipositation causes the cell to hypertrophize and causes gall. You might call them oak apples. The larvae spin around in there and then they're released. You take those oak apples, which are full of tannic acid, you mix ferrous sulfate and a little bit of thyme oil. I know it's time, but I'm trying to cover up for just in case I took it out of somebody's spice rack or anything. Anyway, the pathogenic tendencies of the oak galls breaking down is hindered by the thyme oil. Anyway, I gave you an episode about how to stain a guitar with, there's several. I should just do a playlist. I used sap from eucalyptus cideroxylin, which was Lefty, the Junkpile guitar, Mississippi River water for and mud for the Mississippi Mudslide, which Wendy Jean has, and then Cody Harrell. And this one has a oak gall ink with French polish finish. Those are Grover tuners, not Grover from Sesame Street, just Grover. And then I've got, voila, the Marvel Mystery Oil. Ooh, Eli Green Hoodoo Voodoo Bead. You know, Junior Kimbrough said, that makes it true. This was somewhat substantiated by Cody Harrell from Sardis, Mississippi, cultural capital of the world. That Junior Kimbrough said that Eli Green could throw cards at the ceiling, make them stick, and then calm down by number. Eli Green is the voice you hear on the a recording of Bulldog Blues by Fred McDowell, recorded by George Mitchell in 1967, when George Mitchell and his wife Kathy drove into the Stuccos in Como, Mississippi, which is not real far from Sardis, and I think Como and Sardis are competing to find out who's the cultural capital of the world there. But Eli Green singing on a song is what caused Bob Log III to hear the clomping like this, which caused him to play slide guitar. Where were we? We have this grease zerk, in case your playing gets rusty. We have this gauge that does absolutely nothing. We have this guitar fetish. Easy, easy. It's almost Sunday. I got my best Sunday bibs on. Guitar fetish, big mouth screaming pickup. It's got a coil splitter, and it's got these custom. When I first started coming up here, Fred did not think much of my guitars. Now he has helped me by customizing this. This one says ampersand or question mark. I'm glad I could help you with that. This one says T for tone, and this one says V for volume, and I'm running to the end of my cord here. But anyway, those are custom, scraped in with some blunt object. Oh, by the way, it's grounded through the tailpiece. Yeah, and just in case you need to intonate things, there's dots here. I'm very concerned about the finish here, as you can tell. Yeah. Anyway, this is Buzz, the Junkpile Archtop. It's going to Italy. So the circle of mystery about dirt in Cremona, it is going to Pisa, where the Leaning Tower of Pisa is, and this thing is so heavy, I think if you stand at the top and go like this, it will finally turn over. Oh, look at, there's two, count them, 2 input jacks. One is for a Piezzo. Listen, this thing will play acoustically. Here is my rendition of some acoustic stylings, a loose and poor rendition of Cold Motor. Okay, boring. So, some of you are saying, wow, Ken, you actually sound good. Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I know. Somebody's got to do it anyway. If it makes you think I'm good, that's great. But I'm not. I'm not a priest. I cannot absolve you of your sins. So I plugged it into the gold one. There's gold and silver, so you can see them at night in some drunk dive bar somewhere in Mississippi or Pizza Italy. Anyway, this is the Piezzo. It is right under here. I showed you how to do all this in the episode. I don't know why I'm telling you now, but the acoustics of the guitar are picked up. You hear that? And the most important part, again, I'm very concerned with. You get the idea now. We're going to plug it into here. Oh, listen to that. Let's turn it up a little, shall we? Now, what's cool about this one? Who is me? It's already wanting to jump out at somebody. Is if you turn the tone all the way up on this guitar, it's like a kill switch. It's got a coil splitter on it. Let's try this, shall we? this little switch here. It's very tiny but powerful. Ooh, let's turn this. Let's see if it'll buzz at us. Cam used to turn up the amp and the guitar and wait for the tubes to warm up by running to her room, and the whole house would be like, oh. Ask Cody Harrell, he will tell you. But here is, this switch does something like this. By the way, this is a loose rendition of Cold Motor, stolen from Bob Log the Third. I did that. Let's try some Son House. Let's try some Robert Johnson. Let's try some Cinderella. Let's try absolutely nothing. Let's try getting this in a box and shipping it to my friend, the One Man Buzz. And I'll leave you by telling you that I am sure glad that you got to see me build this guitar today. Actually, it wasn't today. It was a really long time. Anyway, say bye-bye. It's going to Italy.